It's gonna be you. Oh, honey, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny what love can do?
Out of a million, out of a billion, I've chosen you.
When someone gets what I've got in my heart, it's gonna be you. It's gonna.
From Studio 401, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on The Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, and here's our headlines. Low-level UFO encounter reported near the Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania. This comes from the researcher Stan Gordon of the Stan Gordon UFO Anomaly Zone. The report is as follows. On the evening of June 4th, 2019, two people were traveling near Youngstown side of the Chestnut Ridge, not far from Latrobe in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. The sky was clear with good visibility. The passenger in the car suddenly yelled out, "What are those lights?" The driver was watching the road and did not notice them until they were pointed out. The passenger was confused about what she was seeing, since it looked so unusual. She saw what appeared to be a glass tube cylinder among bright lights that seemed to be covered with a smoke or haze. The cylinder appeared to be attached to a large V-shaped object with several rows of different colored lights. The driver pulled the car over and stopped the vehicle so he could view what the other person was watching. The man said he was amazed when he looked up and noticed the odd sight in the sky approximately 80 to 100 yards away from the vehicle. Hovering about 60 feet over the trees was a very strange-looking object shape of a V. The V shape was made up of numerous small rectangular-shaped white lights. These lights were glowing, but would brighten and dim at times. The driver estimated there could have been 50 or more lights. The object was estimated to be 40 to 50 feet long. Above the smaller lights were four larger round lights that were strobing an orange, blue, red, and green in color. The brightness of these colors appeared to be pale compared to the smaller rectangular white lights. These lights seemed to strobe from left to right. There was a larger light that produced a beam that was scanning the sky above the object. The driver lowered his windows as they continued to watch the object. The two observers were amazed that the hovering object was completely silent. As the witnesses continued to watch the object, some odd effects took place. The driver stated it was though the electronic system of the car was having a seizure. The radio was off at the time. However, they suddenly began to hear an odd clicking sound inside the vehicle, but they were unable to locate the source. At the same time, it was noticed that the dash lights were dimming on and off with the beat of the clicking sound. The driver also stated that soon after, he was having a problem with his cell phone, dropping the signal several times. The observers watched the object for about 3 minutes, but it became very disturbed by the encounter and decided to leave the area and continue down the road. The passenger stated, "We were beside ourselves in awe. They didn't even think of trying to take a picture." The object was still hovering as they began to drive down the road, going about 30 miles per hour. That's when something else strange occurred. About 30 seconds after they left the location of the observation, a deer ran out in front of them in the woods. The driver of the car is an experienced outdoorsman and said that the deer looked dazed and confused. It was moments later that another deer did the same thing. Then, just a short distance down the road, a bird hit the car windshield. As they continued for another short distance, an even stranger animal encounter took place. The driver, who is very familiar with the native animals around the area, saw a creature that startled him. He said this creature stopped about 7 feet in front of his vehicle. The creature was directly in his headlights, and he got a good look at it. He knew what it was, but the animal had been declared extirpated in Pennsylvania for many years. He is certain he saw a wolverine. The animal looked directly at the vehicle and was about 4 feet long from tail to snout. It had its mouth open and showed its teeth before running off. As they continued on, more deer quickly exited the woods. The driver commented, "Of all these animals seemed to be confused and frightened. They were all crossing the road as to evade something that had scared them. I was in a state of amazement at what we had encountered, and I'll never forget that strange night." Again, source Stan Gordon. And no time better than right now for a quick fun fact. There is a statue of Nikola Tesla in Silicon Valley that radiates free Wi-Fi. It was done as homage to his vision for wireless communication. Thanks for listening to the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS speed drift.
Contact, nice in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Root. We are live on the Fringe FM. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the broadcast. It is Wednesday night, July the 17th on into the 18th. And tonight we're going to dive into the unknown realm of what happens after we die. Howard Storm, Mr. Howard Storm is with us, a very well-known speaker on this subject who's been on several radio and TV shows, and it is our time and our chance to get to speak with him. This show is brought to you by Get the Tea at GetTheTea.com. The webinar will be on the 29th at 5 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you go to GetTheTea.com and sign up for your chance to win. Also, take advantage of their 3-for-1 giveaway at the website right now. You get one pack for free if you buy 3 teas, and you get some extra stuff with it. It's the best deal I've ever seen them do. Also, Ancient Life Oil, the best CBD on the planet, ancientlifeoil.com, and preparewiththefringe.com. I also want to thank our new supporters. We had someone send in a donation today that wasn't small, and you know who you are, so thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Much love to you. You can support the show by donating at the website, using the Amazon portal, or grabbing any of our swag from the store. And if you've seen a UFO over in the West, you know what to do. Give UFO Seekers a call at 661-UFO-7889. Check out their YouTube channel, youtube.com/UFO Seekers, UFOseekers.com as partner of the Fringe FM. Tomorrow night, Arthur Rob Shelsky will be on the program to discuss UFOs from the moon, and even possibly the Mandela effect. And that's really going to be a cool show. I'm looking forward to that. I want to thank Robert Wagner for coming on last night. And if you happen to miss any of the live broadcasts, the archives are free over on YouTube and SoundCloud and a whole bunch of other places. Pretty much everywhere you can grab them, they're there. So a big shout out to all of you guys too. We get just about as many live listeners as we do archive listeners. of course, as time goes on, I'm going to start figuring out how to reward the live listeners a little bit more. I hate to say it, but I love live radio, and you know that, right? So tonight is a very chilling tale to me of what happened to Mr. Howard Storm, according to his accounts, after he passed. Now, Mr. Storm was born in 1946 and raised in Massachusetts, and currently a pastor of St. Mark United Church of Christ in Latonia, Kentucky. And his wife, Marcia, is a pediatric occupational therapist in Ohio, and they live in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. Marcia and Howard have 6 children and 9 grandchildren between them, and he was ordained in 1992 and served Zion United Church of Christ in Norwood, Ohio, United Church of Christ of Covington, Ohio, and is currently serving at St. Mark United Church of Christ in Latonia, Kentucky. Now, from 1972 to 1992, he was a professor of art and head of the Department of Art at Northern Kentucky University. And he's got degrees from San Francisco Art Institute, and I believe a master's from the University of California in Berkeley, and also degrees from the United Theological Seminary. That's very impressive. All right. Now, on June the 1st of 1985, while dying in a hospital in Paris, France, he had a near-death experience that involved being tormented in hell. He called out to Jesus, being saved, given a life review, and having all his questions answered. And from that experience, he ceased being an atheist and is now a Christian pastor. He's written 4 books based on his experience and has participated in over 30 overseas mission trips and countless missions in the U.S. Currently, there is a Hollywood movie being produced, looks like by Alcon Studios, based on his story. And Reverend Storm and Marcia, it's either Marcia or Marcia. I'll figure that out. Marcia, okay. They live in the house he built in 1977 with their dogs and goldfish, and he is an avid flower gardener, painter, and grandfather. His life is dedicated to sharing the love of God to the world, and especially sharing the love of Jesus Christ, the most important lesson he learned in his near-death experience, and he has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And thank you so much, Mr. Storm, for coming on Lighting the Void. I really appreciate you spending this time with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we talk about a lot of weird, what people call weird and strange things on here, but I am open to hearing everybody's experience. And I told you before the broadcast that I grew up Christian, and kind of I'm leaning towards the mystic side of things. So, my dad, he used to make me listen to the Bible when I was a kid. Alexander Scourby, the tapes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I had to listen to. So tell me about, you're growing up. Before we get into your experience, did you grow up a Christian like me, or did you always just not believe in God?
No, I grew up when it seemed like everybody went to church. So, we got taken to church, although my parents didn't do any praying, or there was no Bible or anything at home. It was just like a Sunday ritual. I mean, the big part of church was getting all dolled up. I had a little clip-on bow tie, and a jacket and a hat and all that when I was like a little bitty kid. And so church was like cultural. But when I got to be a teenager, my sisters they were done with it. And I got done with it too and left it completely behind.
I mean, that happens, right? That happens to a lot of people, I think, that grow up in religion. I think the church kind of wears down on them, and they don't get a lot of questions that they want answered, and so they give up on it. I pretty much did the same thing,
Yeah.
And so as you got older, did you pretty much just give up on the whole idea of religion? I mean, you're just done with it?
Yeah, I was totally disillusioned with it, and I started reading philosophy, and I had when I went to college at 17, I had an atheist philosophy teacher who, really convicted me that religion was a lot of superstition, and that smart people, I wanted to be a smart person, they didn't believe in that stuff. And the only truth was scientific truth. You had to be able to see it, touch it, test it, and that meant it was real, and anything that wasn't subject to materialistic, examination didn't exist.
Right. And so life goes on. You're doing your intellectual studies. How did you What happened? How did you have the near-death experience? Did you have an illness that you didn't know about, or what happened there?
Yeah. In 1985, I was taking a group of my art students around Europe, and it was a 3-week art tour. And on the next to the last day, we were in Paris, and it was a Saturday, June 1st, 85, and I had a perforation of the small stomach, also known as the duodenum. And it just happened at 11 o'clock in the morning. I was talking at the hotel to one of the students, and my wife was there, and the next thing I was on the ground thrashing, screaming, cussing, yelling, and in terror because I had the most unbelievable acute pain in the center of my abdomen.
Yeah, I've been there before. I've been probably not as bad as yours. I had gallstones. I've had gallstones and kidney stones, and I'll tell you, both of them felt like I was dying, but I knew about it. So this was kind of a sudden thing to you, right? Like it just came out of nowhere?
Absolutely out of the nowhere. What I thought had happened, I thought somebody had shot me with a bullet, but I was looking around the room for the gun or the bullet hole or there was no gun. The windows were intact, and I don't know why I had all this pain right in the middle of me. But my wife called the desk at the hotel, and they called an emergency medical service, and a doctor showed up right away, like within 10 minutes, and he got me off the floor and examined me, and he knew immediately what was wrong and told me that I had a couple hours to live, and that I need to get to a hospital and have surgery, or else I'd be dead. So he called an ambulance, and they took me by ambulance to the big public city hospital in Paris, the Hospital General d'Assistance Publique, also known as Cochin. And I went into emergency. They came up with the same diagnosis as the doctor, and they had x-rayed me and took my medical history and everything and sent me off to another building, which was the surgical hospital, to have my surgery. And this was all happening really fast. And although the pain was horrendous, I thought, I'm in Paris, it's going to be okay. It's just going to be, it means I'm going to be in the hospital for a few weeks. That's not,
they'll fix it.
Right. No big deal.
Yeah, that's what we all think too, right? The hospital, they'll fix it. They'll take care of it. No big deal, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
So the problem was, because it was a Saturday and because it's socialized medicine, there was no surgeon available at the surgical hospital because they worked Monday through Friday, and they took the weekends off, and they were basically on call. So I didn't know that, and I'm sure the people in emergency didn't know it. But anyways, so when I went into the hospital, I was not assigned to a doctor. So I was put in a room to wait for a doctor to show up. And that didn't happen for 10 hours.
Oh, my gosh.
I didn't see a doctor for 10 hours, and I was given nothing at that hospital. And when I say nothing, like I didn't have a blanket, I didn't have a top sheet, I didn't have a pillow, nobody took my temperature, my blood pressure. I mean, like nothing. I was just parked in a room and waiting for a doctor to come in and tell somebody to do something.
So were you in pain that whole time? They didn't give you anything for that. That's wow.
They gave me nothing. And the pain went from like, hard to describe, that when you go to the doctor, they say, how's the pain on a scale of 1 to 10?
Right.
When I went to the hospital, it was a 10, and then it kept getting worse and worse.
Wow.
Because what was happening was the digestive juices of my stomach were migrating throughout my abdomen. So instead of it being a localized pain, that pain became from my groin to my shoulders, because of the hydrochloric acid and the digestive juices and the bacteria and everything. I was literally digesting myself on the inside.
Oh, my gosh. At what point did you think, okay, I might die? Like, I'm probably going to die. Did that ever cross your mind?
Oh, yeah. that started becoming, after a while, it's like with no doctor, it's like, and the pain getting worse and worse. I thought, this is bad, but because of my understanding, when you die, you're dead. It's like, I believe that we are a biological creature made up of like electrochemical, interactions, and then when that system fails, it's over. It's like turn on a light switch and the light goes on. You turn the light switch off and the light goes off. It's like, it's real simple. I didn't believe that, like, when I saw a dead animal on the side of the road, I didn't believe that there was any little spirit rising out of the animal going up to animal heaven. I went to a funeral. I didn't think there was any little spirit rising up out of the cadaver going up to heaven. I just said, you're dead, you're dead. It's like, and again, the only problem was I was 38 years old, and the idea of dying was terrifying, because it's like, when you're 38, stuff's starting to happen. I mean, I'd worked hard to get where I was, and I had a wife and 2 kids and a good job, and I'd worked hard to get there, and now all of a sudden it's like game over. Boom, lights out. Really frightening.
Were you scared that so at that point you thought, this is it? Like, once I go out, I'm going to cease to exist? That had to be so frightening. Were you were you saying goodbye to your family and anything like that?
Well, at 8:30 that night, nurse came into the room and she said that they were unable to get a doctor and they would try and get one the next day. Oh. And I was fighting this still. Like, every doctor I've ever talked to told me that I shouldn't have lived past like a few hours. That my maximum life every doctor I talked to, my maximum life expectancy was 5 hours. I'm into like almost 10 at this point. And she said they try and get one the next day. So when she left the room, I said to my wife, I said, it's over. I got to say goodbye. And I told her I loved her, and I told her to tell my kids I loved them and my parents and stuff like that. And I got to be kind of glib about this stuff, because emotionally it's really hard to, talk about. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So it was simple. I mean, I was so weak, and it was really, really hard to breathe, that all I had to do was stop fighting, because I had put up the good fight. I mean, any medical person would tell you that, like, pretty amazing that I did 10 hours in that condition, because I didn't want to die. I mean, I really didn't want to die,
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. And that had to be so scary. I'm sorry that you went through that, but you're here now, though. That's the good news, right? You're here now. So from what I understand is that you passed away and you had some experiences. Now,
oh yeah.
At what point did you know that you were slipping away, or at what point did you feel yourself? Did you feel yourself dying, or did it just happen?
Yes to both. I mean, it was really easy because all I had to do was stop. See, every time I breathed, it would agitate the pain, because when you breathe, you move your diaphragm, your lungs, and this pain was throughout my whole abdominal cavity. So all I had to do was stop trying to breathe anymore, which I'd been doing for hours, because I was very aware that if I stopped breathing, that would be a bad thing. So I'd spent hours. All I was doing was focusing on breathing, like because when I breathed, it hurt a lot. So I had to fight the pain to take a breath, to inhale and exhale, And that's... I just stopped doing it, and I went unconscious, and I was, that was a decision that I made, and I did it.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually, if I'm thinking about it, if it were me or anybody, eventually everybody's got fight in them, you know, but eventually, you know, if you don't get help, you can't fight forever, you know? So when you left your body, can you describe to me what that feels like? Is there any type of feeling that when you know you're out of the body or that you're passing?
Well, so I go unconscious, and then the next thing I know, I'm standing in the middle of the room, and I got my hospital gown on, and I feel better than I've ever felt in my whole life. I could hear, see, taste, feel, touch. Everything was greatly heightened. And I was like, really, I mean, I was happy beyond ecstatic because, like, I thought, I'm cured, you know, just like, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I'm like, I'm better than I've ever been in my whole life, you know, like, this is great. So I actually felt myself with my hands from the top of my head to my feet to make sure that it was all real, and it all felt really real. And I tried to talk to my wife, who was opposite the bed that I had been in, and she had her head down and she was crying. And I got no response from her, which made me angry because the only thing I could interpret from her not interacting with me was that she was mad at me because one of her techniques for punishing me was to ignore me. You know,
silent treatment, right?
Yeah. She was good at that, which I found pretty frustrating to deal with. And I had a roommate in that room who was a very kind, elderly Frenchman, and I tried to talk to him, and he did the same thing. And I couldn't be mad at him because he had no reason to be mad at me because he'd been so nice to me and my wife this whole while because he was our interpreter with the French nurses and stuff. And it was very confusing. I was very, very agitated. And I'm like pacing around in this room. The room was lit. And I heard people outside the room calling me by name in English. And they were saying, Howard, it's time for you to go. You've got to come with us now. So I went over to the doorway of the room, and out in the hallway, way far off from the light of the room, in this sort of dank atmosphere, shadowy, semi-light, semi-dark, was a group of people. And I said, I'm sick. I'm supposed to have surgery. I've been waiting for a doctor. And they said, we know all about you. We can't wait any longer. We've been waiting a long time for you. Hurry up. Let's come with us now. So I assumed that they were hospital people to take me to the doctor. Although I felt good, I was like, I've been here all day waiting for a doctor. I got to see the doctor, right? And I left the room and went with them. And one of the strange things was when I left the room, I got this feeling that I couldn't go back into the room. Like, so the door didn't close, but it felt like that portal back into the light was closing to me. And it disappeared pretty quickly behind me. And these people led me what I thought was the hall. And we went on a very long journey. They surrounded me and led me down what at first I thought was a hallway, but after what might have been days, weeks of journeying with them. I mean, because there's no time there. So like whenever I talk about it, any kind of time, it's all totally emotional.
Sure.
You know, there's no real sense of time. Anyways,
we gotta take our break, but this is when things get pretty intense after this point, right? Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to just stop right there. We're going to take our break, but when we come back, Mr. Howard Storm is going to tell us what happened and where these people were leading him to. We'll be right back.
can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck, Wonderlight Tarot, are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's FRINGE at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com. We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves strip bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25 years shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio. And welcome back. You are listening to Lighting the Void with your host, Joseph Roop.
Welcome back, and tonight we are speaking with Mr. Howard Storm, and we were talking about, right now, we're talking about his near-death experience. He just told us before the break about this sudden illness that came to him and that he had passed away. He left his body in the hospital, and he's being taken down a long hallway, and you described the hallway as, I guess there could have been a very long time, like time wasn't the same thing. And you just thought that these people were trying to help you, right? So take us from there.
And so as we're going along, they start getting ruder and cruder. And I'm starting to hear them say nasty things about me and stuff. And I'm getting terrified. They are not. It's dawning on me they are not what I thought they were. You know, they're not there to help me at all. And also, slowly it was getting darker and darker, and now I find myself in complete darkness, surrounded by a very large crowd of people who clearly don't mean well for me at all. And I said, I'm not going with you any further. And they said, oh, yes, you are. You got further to go.
Well, and what kinds of things were they saying to you, if you don't mind me asking? Like really, really bad stuff you can't say on the air?
I can't use their language because they're pretty vulgar, but they're saying, he's got a sweet little ass, doesn't he?
Oh, my gosh.
I like his mouth. You know, stuff like that.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Which was scaring me pretty good.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, can't wait to get my hands on him. You know, things like that. So I said, I'm not going with you any further. And they said, yes, you are. And so they started push and pull me. And I played football in high school. So, I mean, I knew about taking hits and giving hits, you know. I wasn't afraid of fighting. And I fought because I was just trying to get them off me. And there were a lot of them. And it was hopeless. And then from pushing and pulling, it turned into them scratching and clawing and biting and then ripping and tearing me apart. So that's what they did. They tore me apart. And it hurt. People always ask me, did it hurt? Yeah, it hurt a lot. I think it hurt more than it would in this world because I was like, I said earlier, you know, it's like, had all these heightened senses. So it was especially painful.
And they look just like us, like regular people, but, you know, mean, I guess.
Yeah. And they won. I lost. So I was on the ground of that place, all ripped up. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even moan or anything anymore. And they were really frustrated with me because people were kicking me around, trying to get a reaction from me, but I couldn't even react anymore. And I heard a voice come out of my chest. I'm sure it came out of my chest, and it said, pray to God. And I thought, well, that's a stupid idea. I don't believe in God. And the voice said, pray to God. And I thought, I don't even know how to pray. I don't know what a prayer is. And the voice said, pray to God. And I thought, okay, when I was a kid and we went to Sunday school, we said prayers. What were those? And so I'm trying to think of something that I had learned when I was a child. So I came up with like the Pledge of Allegiance, and I remembered a little bit of Shakespeare that I'd learned.
Right.
All kinds of stuff. And finally I hit upon a couple phrases like, Lord is my shepherd, or, you know, our Father who art in heaven. I don't remember the whole prayer, it's just like a phrase or two. So I thought I'd give it a shot. So I said them aloud, and the people around me became very, very angry, and they were saying in language that I can't repeat. I've never repeated because it's really, really vulgar, that there is no God, nobody could hear me, and that if I didn't stop, they were going to do worse things to me than what they'd already done.
Oh my God.
But I also, as I kept making up stuff about God, which wasn't too pretty, but it's all I had, they were backing off away from me because just mentioning God was so painful to them that they couldn't stand to be around it. So they were retreating away from me back into the darkness, and I found myself all alone in that place, lying there. And then I had like all the time in the universe to think about my life. And when I thought about my life, I thought, well, you know, as a son, I had no relationship with my father, and I hated each other, which was a big problem in terms of my relationship with my mother, because my mother was married to my father. You know, it's like, so wasn't conducive to much there. My relationship with my wife was rocky. My relationship with my kids was like, had a lot to be desired, et cetera, et cetera. When I went through my whole life, it was like, why was I born? You know? Because like in my ego, my whole thing was like, I was like this wonderful, great, fabulous, you know, super guy. Seriously, you know, I had really high opinion of myself. You know, God's gift to the world. Like, I was an athist, but anyways.
I know exactly what you're saying. A lot of us think that we're super special folks. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I went through like the reality of my life, it was like, why did I ever exist? You know, because like nothing I did amounted to, all I can think of is a hill of beans. Pardon the old expression, but I mean, you know, looking back on my life, it's like, so what? You know, you know, I existed for a while and then it's over, and there's no reason to it. And it's very, very depressing. And I came to the realization that when you live a crappy life, you end up in the cesspool. And that's what I concluded, that I'd ended up in the cesspool of the universe. And it was very depressing. And I knew that I had absolutely no sense of how I was ever going to get out of this mess, except just be part of it.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you a couple of questions right here at this? If you don't mind, Mr. Storm. So you said you had all the time in the universe to think about your life. Do you mean that literally? That you got to sit there and just think about everything?
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear and you couldn't see or hear your wife or your family or anything anymore at this point, right?
No, just complete alone in the darkness. It's so unbelievably depressing. I don't think there's a word to describe it. You know,
I've got a friend who's described it before. Yeah, so it was dark, and you so you started thinking about all the. Now, did you feel that? Like, did you have emotions as you were feeling this stuff and thinking about it?
Yeah. And you know, one of the things I thought about was like, why did they do all this horrible stuff to me? You know, I mean, because I didn't know them, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they were strangers. So why would they do that to me? But they did. And so I was pretty much resigned to this was it, you know, forever and ever and ever and ever, time without limit. This was what was going to happen, except they had promised that they had worse in store for me. And I couldn't imagine what that would be. And I remembered being a little child sitting in a Sunday school classroom singing Jesus Loves Me. Yeah. And when I remembered that, I remembered believing that there was, I mean, my idea of Jesus was just there was this super nice guy, you know, with the white robe and the beard and the long hair who, when I was a little kid and had nightmares, you know, I'd ask him to get the bears and alligators and lions and tigers away from me, and he would, you know. Mm-hmm. And I thought I'll give that a try, because that was the only tool I could find in my toolbox that might do anything. And that's all I thought it was, you know, I'll try this, you know. So sure. I called out to him, and he came.
So you saw Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. He came at first a pinpoint of light, and then he came over me and he reached down with his hands and arms and touched me, and I was made whole again and filled with his love, and he picked me up and held me up against him, and he took me out of that place, and we went directly up and out of that world of darkness.
Wow. Yeah, that's you know, hearing you talk about that when you're doing that as a kid kind of reminded me of, anyways, it reminded me of a lot of my childhood, you know. Somewhere along the line, I let that go, you know, like it was just a fantasy. It was not real.
Yeah, kid stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now I go around the world trying to tell people that it is real.
Right.
You know, I mean, I do appreciate the irony of it, that here I am, a grown man, talking about Jesus loves me,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like, you've got a really good background in education. You got several degrees and you know all this stuff. And yet, well, anyways, yeah. So I don't want to babble on. So tell me what happened after that, after he came.
So we were headed towards, heaven, which I perceived as this big giant galaxy of light. And as we were approaching it, I thought, he's made a terrible mistake. I'm a piece of garbage. He should put me back where he found me, because I was feeling pretty unworthy. And because here's a guy that for my entire adult life told everybody that heaven's a myth and there is no God and Jesus is a fantasy, a fairy tale. And all of a sudden, he's like the only real thing in the world for me. And I thought that he should put me back. And he said, I thought he's made a terrible mistake. And he said, we don't make mistakes. You belong up here. And I was like, how'd you know I thought that? And he said, I know everything you've ever thought. And when he said that, I immediately started thinking of all the things that I didn't want him to know that I thought about, which primarily had to do with women.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically their anatomy.
Yeah, I know exactly I think we all know what you're saying. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, my mind goes to like very specific images of women's anatomy, of the things that I don't want him to know that I think about. And he started laughing and laughing and laughing. And I was like, whoa.
He's laughing at that, huh?
Yeah, he thinks it's funny. This is great. We're going to get along, Of course, you can't help but love someone who thinks you're funny, right? Because most people don't think you're funny. My wife never thought it was funny.
Yeah, I get that. So anyways, I think I'm funny too, but most people don't.
Yeah. So we started conversing, and he said he had some people he wanted me to meet. So he called out and referred to them as angels. These were people that had been around me all my life, or they were angels who'd been around me all my life. And they said they wanted to show me my life. So I went through my life and started off pretty fun. And then as I became more self-centered and manipulative and less interested in other people and more totally focused on myself, it wasn't so fun, because they shared their feelings with what I was doing with my life. And many times I told them I didn't want to see anymore, and they said, no, you got to see it all. So we went through my life, and when it was over, I was really glad that we didn't have to watch any more of that.
What kinds of things did they show you, though, if you don't mind me asking? Like, did they show you every single thing or just certain parts?
Selective things. It was all about how I interacted with people. Like, for example, I like a scene of me sitting in the kitchen with my mom. My mom always had a cold cup of coffee in front of her.
Yeah,
smoking her Newport cigarettes, and me sitting there, talking to my mom, and that was pretty good stuff. Or, doing something nice for one of my sisters, which was kind of rare, but occasionally I just did something good with them. And then later on in life, when a student would come to my office to pour out his heart, and I'm like bored to death having to listen to all this like teenage love garbage, and me the whole time pretending that I was interested, and in fact thinking, they don't pay me enough to listen to this junk.
Yeah, you're just waiting for them to stop talking. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was 100% about how I had treated other people. That was what they wanted me to see. And as I got older and older, I did worse and worse in my compassion for other people, because I was so self-centered. And the things that I thought were like my big successes, like winning awards, prizes, promotions, stuff like that, they had no interest in whatsoever. They told me those things meant nothing. which was like, that's all I'd cared about, you know? And so Jesus said, do you have any questions? I said, I got a million questions. So he said, ask anything you want. So I asked him everything I could think of to ask him at the time, and everything I asked, he not only answered, but we would go places back in history, forward into the future, and we would experience things in we went to other worlds, other universes. I mean, it was really great.
Really?
And yeah.
Did you see other beings like us, or were they different?
I saw both. Like at one point, I mean, he was telling me that the universe is full of life, and there's all these intelligent beings and all these civilized worlds all over the world. And I said, so what do they look like? So he paraded a parade of beings for me, and it was at first they were like human looking, and then as the parade went by, they became less human like. When they got to the point where they started looking like, the only way I can describe them is like deep undersea creatures, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like weird, you know, insect, fish, like, I don't know.
Like some of the weirdest stuff we have in our oceans, right? Like really weird looking stuff. Huh.
Yeah. I mean, when he started showing me that stuff, I said, okay, I get it. A lot of different intelligent beings in the universe. Like, I get it. That's enough. I don't want to see anymore. And we talked a lot about life on other planets and stuff. And it was all pretty interesting, but I mean, when I asked him a lot of questions, you know, he would start going over my ability to comprehend, and I'd tell him, okay, that's enough. That's more than I can handle, you know.
Right.
Which he respected the fact that I couldn't handle too much, because I mean, intellectually, I'm a little ant, you know, compared to his gigantic knowledge and understanding of the universe. So.
Well, that's what I would feel too. I mean, there's so many people in the world and the universe, and like if it were me, Mr. Storm, you know, I would feel like, why me? Why are you showing this to me?
Well, you know, all he did was respond to my questions. People have always asked me, did he tell you about this? Did he tell you about that? And so many things I didn't ask about, because at the time I was not interested or unaware of it. So I asked about what I was interested in. I asked him a lot about war and history and stuff, because that was stuff I was interested in. So I asked him a lot of questions about me personally, you know, and he answered everything to my total satisfaction. So when we got done with that, I said, I want to go. He'd shown me heaven, but I was never a part of heaven. And I said, well, I want to go be there forever, because heaven's like really fun. It's rich. It's full. It's interesting. And he said, no, you're not really fit. You just wouldn't really be a part of it right now. You don't have the character for it. He said, you got to go back and try and live the way we've been trying to show you how you should have lived in the first place, which was caring for other people. And so we had a huge argument, and I argued. And everything that I put forth, he destroyed with reason and with stronger arguments about why my arguments were flawed. And finally, I agreed to come back. And with that, without any transition at all, I was back in the bed, in the body, in the pain. And immediately, the nurse who had been in the room at 8:30, this is now around 9 o'clock, came into the room and said, a doctor has arrived at the hospital. This is Saturday night, 9 o'clock. And they prepped me for surgery, and I had the surgery at 10 o'clock that night.
Oh, wow. So you came back before you had the surgery. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I want to ask kind of a tough question here, but I'm thinking if it were me, I would have asked him about the Bible, right? Like,
I asked him about him in the Bible.
Did you? Okay.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know enough about the Bible to ask him biblical questions, but I asked about his life in the Bible. and he showed me. I mean, we went to places like the crucifixion and stuff.
But you know what I mean, like the contradictions and stuff, right? I don't know, but you did. I'm glad you did ask him that. Well, I had a million questions to ask him. Here's
my opinion about the Bible. I 100% believe every word in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the rest of the Bible I look at through the eyes of Jesus, which is like, okay, that represents God. That is not God at all. That represents people, projecting their stuff into God, but it's not God. Wow. That's the way I look at the Bible. It's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's my pure Bible, and then the rest of it is just I look at critically.
You know what? That's actually how I look at it too. Wow. Yep. Okay. All right. I promise you guys, we didn't talk about anything about not like this before the show. Nothing like this. So that's really strange. Let's see. I only got a few minutes left here before I got to go to break. I wanted to talk to you about the future and what they showed. What do you talk to you about the future of the world and stuff? I mean, is that cool if we take a break and you come back and tell us about that?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and take our break here before we get into that, and we'll be right back with Mr. Howard Storm.
This is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? Cannasense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. Cannasense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the cost, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and Cannasense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
Ahoy there. Gigi here from Shift Happens. Do you like to boogie down to topics such as ufology, the occult, and the mysteries behind our reality? Well, I invite you to join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, as we like to punch that curiosity button and tickle that fancy. We tickle that fancy, but yeah, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but there's certainly a lot of tickling going on over here at Shift Happens.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
AncientLifeOil.com. For your CBD needs, just remember, AncientLifeOil.com. What does it do for the body, you ask? I can't say to the people in the suits that run the industry. Big Pharma is all over CBD because of its well, you know what I mean. Research the benefits of CBD on Google and come back to AncientLifeOil.com and purchase your CBD today. non-GMO, and all organic. You don't want to be using a petroleum product. You want to be using the cleanest CBD product on the market, ancientlifeoil.com. We even have CBD for your pet. Help your pet's discomfort. Help your discomfort. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Newly reduced prices to pass off the savings to the most important person, you. ancientlifeoil.com. And one more thing, we have topicals too. So if you have joint pain and some different issues that are going on in your body, you might want to use a topical. Think about it. ancientlifeoil.com.
Alex Exum. This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
You're listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're live on the Fringe FM. Don't forget the show is here for you Monday through Friday night, every week, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight. And also, after the show, The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable comes on after the show every night, too. Tonight, we're speaking with Howard Storm, near-death experiencer, and I'm finding out, actually, through my chat room, that you've been on some pretty popular shows and radio shows like Unsolved Mysteries and Oprah and all kinds of stuff. I had no idea about any of that. And I'm sure your wife Marcia's really had fun doing all that stuff, huh? What's that been like? I'm just curious what that's been like, being on all the TV shows and stuff.
Well, I mean, she never has, but she's been a really good sport about it, because she's had to listen to my story so many times. I always say to her, I said, this must be really boring for you, because I pretty much tell the same story every time. Yeah. And she said, no, it's all right. Because she understands that it's something I have to do, because I feel like it's important for me to tell the truth, because I think that the world is full of a lot of distractions, deceptions, and just outright lies,
Yeah, sure. And I never thought for a second that you were going to bring up aliens, and I want to talk to you about that. But I do want to mention let's all face the facts here about something. If you've been listening to the show for quite some time, we've had several people that have come on the show, guest callers, listeners alike. And anytime they get into a desperate situation, and we're not talking about, I'm getting a traffic ticket type desperate. We're talking about life and death or really scary situations. Most people will admit that, and when they call out to Jesus, that it works. And I mean, it's not a religious thing. I'm not trying to push a belief. You guys know my beliefs, right? I'm kind of a mystic, so I'm pretty open. But I do know that works. And that's the one thing that you pulled out of your arsenal that helps you to get out of that bad situation, right?
Yeah. But when you say my arsenal, I was down to the last arrow in my quiver.
That was the last thing, huh?
Yeah.
Well, even, Robert Monroe, he talks about his out-of-body experience, which really resembles what happened to you. And he wasn't religious either. And he got attacked by some things that were just, they weren't really tearing him apart, but they were attaching to him and all kinds of stuff. And he called out to Jesus for help,
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all in the book. It's all there. That's all I'm trying to bring up is that fact that we know that works. Right. So after Jesus rescued you and you're in this place and you're talking to him, he showed you these aliens and showed you all these different universes in the future. I'm wondering, and this is kind of a weird question, but did he ever show you anything about our planet? Like if they're aliens here or if they're around here, we just don't know it or anything like that?
Yeah. He showed me a lot of stuff about this, so I'll try and keep it, simple. For example, he showed me that there were lots of worlds that were very advanced, and what he was showing me is that they're spiritually advanced so that they don't use technology. They do all this stuff through their mind, through their spirit. Like, for example, he showed me that advanced civilizations don't travel in spaceships. They go anywhere they want to in the universe instantaneously because they can. They telepathically the advanced civilizations telepathically are all connected to each other, and they communicate all the time. And that's our destiny, is to be part of, if you will, a higher order of being where you don't need stuff. You don't need gizmos. You don't need batteries, wires. You don't need, computers or anything. You can just do it. You can move through time and space by will. And in the future, we won't be subject to the laws of the physical universe. We'll create our own physical universe. And what that translates into, we will live in complete harmony with this planet, and we'll do it collectively, globally, with everybody in unison. That means the weather. That means that we can grow stuff instantaneously. He showed me, like in the future, would you be able to look at a seed and grow it into a full-grown plant and harvest it and consume it.
Wow!
In a matter of seconds.
You've never read Robert Monroe's books, right? You don't even know who I'm referring to.
I read one of them.
I
read the first one.
Well, and the third one, he talks about that, the advanced civilizations. Yeah, so I find that, that's fascinating, because he met beings that did that. Like they would, and a matter of fact, they could go in and out of their body as they chose, and they could control the weather the way they wanted to, the life, plant life, anything. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the future of our planet that he showed me, it's a paradise beyond anything we can imagine, because we're so tied into a materialistic understanding of the world that the material world is only to support our spiritual nature. It's not like, you've all heard the expression, we're a spiritual being having a physical experience.
Right.
That is true. The problem is most people don't know that, and they think they're a material being having a material experience, and that's not what it's about. It's about we're spiritual beings having this material experience, and we're supposed to make the most of it in the future. We won't necessarily think of ourselves as material beings anymore. Anyhow, so that the future that he was showing me was about 200 years off, and I thought that was like really soon, too soon, because like right now, I don't think the world's very advanced at all. And he said that it's going to accelerate very rapidly. And one of the things that's going to help us, besides God, whatever that might mean, is that the advanced beings are going to intercede in our development and start moving us along. So that led into my question about aliens. I said, so are there aliens in the world? And I was talking, this is in 1985, and he said, yeah, there's a lot of them. And I said, so are they the ones that are going to help us? And he said, no, the ones that are around now are no good, and we should avoid them. They aren't helping us at all. And he said the good ones are biding their time and mostly just observing, and they will interact with us when they feel. So as he explained to me, the problem is that if the advanced beings gave us these supernatural powers, if you will, we would misuse them. Like, hypothetically, someone got a supernatural power. What's going to happen to that person? Well, the government's going to get a hold of them, and then they're going to
turn them into a lab rat.
Yeah, they're going to put them in some kind of benevolent imprisonment and try and exploit whatever power or gift they have, whether it be telepath. And we already have examples of that because we know that kind of stuff has happened in Russia. They tried to develop, telepathic stuff, and anything that a person had that could be used, that could be weaponized, we would do it, right? It'd be turned into a weapon. So that's why the higher beings are not giving us all the goodies that they want to give us. So I said, how is this going to come about? And he said, well, it's going to come about either one or two ways, and we get to choose which way we get it. He didn't use this term, but I'm going to use it. One way is the conversion of everybody to seek a spiritual path of love and hope and peace and God and all that good stuff. That would be one way. So big, gigantic conversion of the world towards being more loving, kind, spiritual beings. And that would be the fast track towards paradise. And the other way is reset button, where there will be worldwide catastrophe. And he told me how the catastrophe will be. The electrical grid globally will crash. And when that crashes, chaos will ensue. And I think a good analogy would be like the Mad Max movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where basically the most violent, most ruthless people will join forces and develop gangs, and they will slaughter, massacre everybody that they can get their hands on for simple resources. And we're talking about a can of, an 8-year-old can of beans. That's worth killing a family for. Gasoline would, of course, be highly prized.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, that would happen. Joe Rogan talked about this one time, like what would happen if the power went out, right? He goes, well, I know what I would do is I would sit there and wait for the power to come back on. That's what most of us would do, right? And then once we figured out the power is not going to come back on, then we'd start going out in the street and talking to each other and trying to figure things out. And then we'd start getting into survival mode, and eventually it'd lead back into primal stages where we're trying to fend off wildlife, you know?
Yeah. Well, Jesus showed me an image of a gang mutilating a little girl and sending her to a house that they knew had stockpiled resources. And these people were well armed. The people that in the house where they had stockpiled things, they had lots of ammo and guns and stuff. And the little girl comes knocking at the door. And so they'd be looking at her through their peepholes. And then finally they'd open the door to let the little girl in. And the minute they did that, they would be, because the gangs had rocket propelled grenades. They had, serious machine guns and stuff like that. Wipe out the family and go for whatever resources they could get out of it. Absolutely no qualms about massacring a family, massacring children for the sake of, getting another couple days worth of supplies.
Well, think about it too. As wild as that sounds to some folks, like, well, that's just crazy. We would never do that. Well, we're already doing that. There's places in the world right now where that's already happening. We just choose to ignore it.
Yep. So that's not the scenario that God wants. God wants us to, change the way that we interact with one another. I think if anybody uses the slightest bit of imagination, thought of a world where we were kinder to each other, how much better the world would be. Just right now. I mean, we could all decide, okay, let's all be, kind to each other and see what happens. It would be a totally different world. It would be unrecognizable. So
you got to spend a lot of time with Mr. Jesus, didn't you?
Yeah.
Quite a bit of time.
Yeah. So one of the things because I think this is a relevant segue, I asked Jesus, so why are we in this low level world? Because this world is, I think it's fair to say this world is bestial, and I'm not no slam on the animal kingdom, but it's, basically it's a dog eat dog world. We just, have certain social ways of expressing our bestiality. And Jesus said that this is our learning experience. And I said, why isn't it a better world? And he said, God is giving us the opportunity to make it into a beautiful world. And God's not going to impose that paradise until we choose it. Because the strange thing is about being an intelligent being is the idea of free will. With free will, you get to do whatever you want. You can become, a monster, or you can become a saint. And nobody's going to stop you, And if you're smart, you can probably get away with either option. And
that's the truth.
So this whole idea of will is really important to God. We have that's one of the reasons why we're here, is to shape a will that is a will that is interested in loving and caring about other people, as opposed to being completely self-centered.
Earlier you'd mentioned that he said that he could see all the stuff that you saw, and you were speaking my mind, because that's what I'd be worried about too. What about all those women I was looking at? Did he see that too? Yeah. Right. So what about things like that, like sin and shame and those types of things? That's a lot of the reasons why we do it. It's
kind of overrated. All that stuff's overrated. Humans are obsessed with sexuality. God has no interest in sexuality at all. Zero. But we want to project that onto God. It's like, oh, he's thinking about what we're thinking about. And like, God's like not thinking about that stuff. The word sin means intentional separation from God. So when I asked Jesus, what's the worst sin a person can do? All right, this is interesting. He told me to use God in a way to manipulate other people for your own gain. Like, I'll give you an example, and I don't mean this any particular person. Let's just imagine, like, for example, a celebrity TV preacher who says, if you send me $50, I will send you an anointed napkin I prayed over, which will solve all your problems, and you will instantly get a new car and a new home, and your life will be, and all your diseases will be healed and cured forever if you just send me $50. According to Jesus, that kind of stuff is really, really, really big sin. You know?
Yeah, they got jets now, Mr. Storm.
God doesn't like being used that way. Actually, not a very godly way to put it, but it really pisses God off. You know, and the fact that, like, men, for example, I don't know about women at all, because I don't understand them. The more I know, the more I'm around women, the more I realize I have no idea what's going on in their brain. But I know men, because I am one and I talk to a lot of them, and all men are obsessed with sex. Yep. And you know what? God made us that way. And he made us that way for a reason, because he wants us to bond, you know, with women and care about women and stuff like that. And I'm going to say something that's going to get me in a lot of trouble. You know, if we weren't obsessed with sex, we wouldn't have much to do with women. You know, us guys would all go hang out with each other because it's a lot simpler and easier just to hang out with a bunch of guys, you know. Well, I love women. I'm obsessed with them, and you know, and I want to be around them all the time.
You know what? If you really look at that, though, I've really thought deeply about that. Especially like the whole Adam and Eve story, and that thing. Like, what's the big deal, right? Like, why are we doing all this stuff? Why do we go out and we work real hard so we can have a nice home, so we can live comfortably, so we can have status and all this other stuff? And if you look at the most powerful men that only care about money, they only care about material things, right? Yeah. To them, it's, if you really talk to them and get to know them or study them, it's all about them being able to get the hottest woman or the most beautiful woman on the planet. That's what it's all about. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and it's just like the animal kingdom, you know. It's like the guys all competing for the privilege of mating with the most desirable females. I mean, it's right from the insects all the way up through all the mammals and the birds and everything. That's all anybody's doing. You know, we go around and build these nests, and then we dance around the nest, going, "Anybody interested?"
Yeah, you know? Exactly. You
know, I mean, it's pathetic when you think about it. Really pathetic.
But if we serve spirit, it would be a different world. That's kind of where that comes from. You can't serve two masters, right? You're either serving spirit or God, or you're serving materialism. Because
the interesting thing is, men and women are so different that the point is, we are designed to learn to appreciate a completely different person. And so, like, my goal, you know, when I was young, my goal was to find a woman that thought like I did and acted like I did and cared about the same things I do. And now that I'm older and hopefully more mature, I don't expect I like the differences. My wife likes a lot of different things than I do. Some of the things we like the same, but like when we go to a restaurant or when we're having a meal at home, she doesn't have to, you know, want what I want. I don't have to want what she wants. You know, I mean, we go to a nice restaurant, she gets a salad and I get a, you know, hunk of beef, you know, right?
Right.
You know, beef a little difference, you know, yay. Right. It's cool.
So before you had this near-death experience, right? What it sounds like that this changed a lot of things about the way you thought and the way you felt.
Yeah. Everything. I'm still trying to process. I mean, it's been 34 years and I'm still trying to process it. I guess I'm just a slow learner.
No. No, it's just when people hear stories like this, the first thing that enters their head, and I'm just being honest with you, Mr. Storm, is he telling me the truth? Did this really happen, right? That's what people want to know first and foremost, right? And I'm thinking usually I try to look for an agenda behind what everybody's saying or some type of confirmation bias, stuff like that. But your story is different. I mean, you really were, I guess, going down the intellectual path, didn't believe in any kind of spirit. You thought once you're dead, you're worm food. That's it. And you even thought that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you even thought that up to the point that you had the near-death experience, right?
Yeah, even into it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is amazing. So the future, so we get to make the choice. Jesus showed you that we're going to make a choice, right? Eventually, somewhere within the next 200 years.
Yes. And hopefully, it's going to start happening soon because, frankly, I'm not seeing it happening. I'd like to see it happening, but I don't see it happening. And I mean, to put it as simply as possible, it's the choice between a materialistic worldview and a spiritual worldview.
And all we have to do, I guess, all we got to do is start being more service-oriented to other folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and the interesting thing about giving ourselves away, to put it that way, is that it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding to be patient and kind and loving, and it's so not rewarding to be completely selfish and manipulative. You know.
We talked about this the other night, Mr. Storm, about how could we, I think it was my other co-host that comes on sometimes, how I forget what night it was, but anyway, we have people that get together by the thousands and even a million at one point, where they all pray in unison, right, for world peace or for something like that. But it doesn't seem to work, or maybe it works for a little bit, and I wonder why that is sometimes. Do we really have to get everybody on board, right?
Yeah,
is that what it's going to take?
We do have to get everybody on board because we get distracted so easily. I mean, I get distracted every day from trying to be the person that I want to be and then regressing back to being an animal, you know? And it's a constant struggle, but we do make progress. It's just pretty slow. We can progress. After my near-death experience, I thought when I came back, I'd just be like the most wonderful, kindest, saintly person in the world. And I quickly found out it wasn't going to work that way. Then I'm going to have to work on myself every day, and how I interact with people and how I change me. Now, one of the things I've learned in the past 34 years is that I can't change anybody. I can't fix anybody. All I can do is change me and hopefully be an example of what I think we all should be. Because the worst in the world is to be a hypocrite. That's. I mean, it's interesting. Like in the life of Jesus, the only time he really got ugly, and there are examples in the Bible where Jesus gets just real ugly, is dealing with hypocrites.
Yeah,
he does not like hypocrisy.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that, about maybe what you think, and just to get your opinions. And maybe he answered that to you. There's a lot of missing time in Jesus's life in the Bible, although we're up against a break. Maybe he talked to you about that, and also ask you a few questions. I'm getting in text message here, and I think there's a couple in chat as well too. We'll be right back with Mr. Howard Storm, guys. Fascinating stuff.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com.
So, have you heard of heavy metals? I'm not talking about the heavy metals in the junkyard. I'm talking about the heavy metals that build up in your body. Heavy metals in your body can make you feel sluggish, fatigued, and just plain off. Why not try Life Change Tea at GetTheT.com? Cleansing your body and making you feel great. No, not cleansing the outside of your body, but cleansing the inside of your body of intruders that sneak their way into you and set up an intruder camp. Life Change Tea helps remove unwanted intruder camps. Brew it, steep it, and drink in the results. Tastes great, so you can create a new health habit. Our tea loves to help people. It just needs the chance. So order yours today by logging on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Our Life Change Super Strength Tea is waiting. This could be a beautiful relationship. Take charge of your health. Order at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com.
Alex. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, The Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm, call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Alright everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old China plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Light in the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your northern south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM, and visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, don't forget tomorrow night on the program, Rob Shelsky's going to be with us. And then Friday night, we're going to do open lines again. Tonight, we're here with Mr. Howard Storm, near-death experiencer and author, current pastor. Also, I have to say this again, I'll have to admit, you've got a very impressive education. background in that too, so that's kind of impressive to me that you went through all of these things, passed away for a moment as an atheist, and came back. Well, you know, even though you're a pastor, you don't seem religious to me, though. I'm just going to be honest with you. You don't seem like the religious type, Mr. Storm.
I take that as a compliment because I don't like. See, I think that this is really simplistic, but it's just a way of expressing something. I'm not as simplistic as it sounds. I found that there's two kinds of people. There's people that love religion, and I just am very uncomfortable around them. And then there's people that love God, love. They want to love other people. And I think they're great. And so when I meet people of other faiths other than Christianity, I don't judge them. And when they express that they're all about love and about caring for other people, I'm like, you're great, you know? You're great. Jesus loves you. Keep doing what you're doing, you know? And they're like, really? And I said, yeah, Jesus thinks you're super, you know?
And you get that idea because you felt the same way, right? Like, I'm just this one nobody kind of person that's done all these bad things, and yet Jesus kind of laughed at some of the things you were worried about as if they were no big deal.
Yeah. We put our morality all upside down and backwards. Morality is about being compassionate, and it's not about doctrines, and it's not about whether you smoke cigarettes or drink wine or anything like that. If you do those things to excess where you're hurting yourself or other people, then it's not a good thing. But, you know, and I'm sure you've heard this in Arkansas and in Kentucky. It's like, I don't smoke and I don't chew and I don't go out with girls that do.
Yeah, that's right.
That makes you a righteous person. Well, that's a lot of baloney.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I have to admit, though, I would have thought that maybe we would have gone out in the future, like you were talking about how he showed you the choices that we were heading towards in the future, that we would have killed each other off in a nuclear fallout. There's so many nukes across the world. That's what I would.
I asked him about. Yeah, that's. I asked him about that because I was born in 1946. I was raised when I went to elementary school. We used to duck and tuck. Do you know what duck and tuck is?
Duck and tuck. No, I think so. Is it a game that you play?
Back in the 50s, in public school, they had a special war siren, which was different than weather sirens or fire sirens. It was a war siren. And we would all go under our desks and get into a tuck position when the nuclear bombs started dropping. Okay? And that would make us safe when we had a nuclear war. And then I remember this specifically. I was a young teenager, and the Boston Globe on its front page showed a diagram of Massachusetts and New England. If a 50 megaton bomb landed on Boston, these concentric circles would show how many people would be instantly vaporized. The next circle would show how many people would be dead within 5 seconds from the blast. This circle shows how many people would die from radiation sickness within a week. And this went all the way out to Western Massachusetts. It's like we stopped doing duck and tuck, and people stopped building bomb shelters in the basement of their homes because people realized, there's a nuclear war. You're not going to survive it. Everybody's going to die, you know?
Yeah. Well, we did that for tornadoes and earthquakes and stuff. But, yeah.
So I asked Jesus about that, and he said there's not going to be a nuclear war. And I said, why? And he said, God's not going to allow it. And I said, God would intervene in human affairs and stop a nuclear war? And he said, yep. And I said, God would reach down and grab a ballistic missile, intercontinental ballistic missile, and stop it? And he said, yep. And I said, why would God do that? And he said, it's not just about people. He said, God made the world and he loves the trees and the plants and the flowers and the birds and the bugs and the the animals, and God's not going to let human beings destroy this planet. This planet is one of God's little works of art. It's God's garden, and he's not going to let human beings do that to a world that God made. So there is not going to be a nuclear war. Jesus told me emphatically.
Wow. We've actually seen that. Dr. Sala and other folks have witnessed that some of these missiles and certain types of weapons get taken out in the sky, and and in the videos you just kind of see like this thing show up and it does something and the weapons go nothing, like something's watching out. Yeah, that's happened already.
I didn't know that. That's cool. I like it.
So the idea is we're not going to take each other out, not really through technology, but probably the lack of, and just either tear each other apart or learn to get along. Isn't that something?
Yep.
Because if you think about it, right, we do that to our children when they fight, and you get so sick of them fighting, you say, well, look, here's what I'm going to do. This timeout stuff isn't working. I'm going to throw you guys in this, what my grandmother used to make me do, is we would have to sit in two chairs and stare at each other.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. Deal with them.
Yeah.
Learn to deal with each other. I think that's the lesson here, right?
Yeah.
And so you wrote 4 books, and the first one was your first book, My Descent into Death? Was that the first one you wrote?
Yeah. And that's about my near-death experience exclusively.
So it's My Descent into Death, A Second Chance at Life by Howard Storm. Is forward by Anne Rice. Wow, that's impressive. And I'm sure that's changed a lot of people's lives. What kind of feedback have you gotten on that book?
99.9% really positive, very gratifying. And then a little tiny percent of people attacking me. And that's mostly fundamentalist Christians saying that I'm not a Christian, that I'm the devil.
Why do they say that?
Honestly, I have no idea. I don't pursue conversations with them.
Okay, I get that.
Because, I'm not that masochistic,
Yeah, I get it.
Because, when people who don't know anything about me call me the devil, I, okay, well, sorry you feel that way, bye,
Yeah, I think that's what turns a lot of people off about religion. To be honest with you, we've had, and I hope I'm not offending you by saying that. I don't think I would. No. But if you look at the stories of Jesus, right, and we were talking about that before the break, there's so much of his life in those 4 books that aren't accounted for. And he talks about a lot of the same stuff the Eastern mystics do. He didn't, it wasn't about being self-righteous and pure. It was about forgiving each other, knowing who you really are, knowing that there's something there that you could always tap into that we're just taught that it's not there, and getting along with each other. That's it.
Right. Like I asked him when I was arguing with him about sending me back here, I said, how can you send me back? Because, I'm probably going to make mistakes. And you want me to be perfect. And he said, you're never going to be perfect. You're going to make lots of mistakes. And I said, well, why will you send me back into the world to make all these mistakes? And he said, mistakes are all learning opportunities. He said, when you make a mistake, learn something from it and try not to make the same mistake again and move on. He said, don't worry about it. He said, you were made that way. That the old thing about Edison made how many light bulbs before he had one that was successful, 1,000, 3,000. That's our life. We're constantly making flaws. My son-in-law is a high-end builder, and we were working together doing some remodeling, and he said, you got to remember, measure twice and cut once. I went duh, that's right. That's a really good idea. Really good idea. I got to remember that. That really makes a lot of sense. But the truth of the matter is you probably should measure 3 or 4 times before you cut. Yeah,
that's so right. And And then you went on to write some more books, Lessons Learned, It's All Love. Is this your wife on the front of that book, Miss Marcia?
Yeah.
And it looks like she's in the garden or something. That's cool.
Yeah, we were in France, and we're in this beautiful. We were a guest at a woman's house, and she was surrounded by all these beautiful flowers. And I thought, well, that's perfect for this book, you know.
And then you wrote also Befriend God, A Life with Jesus. And I'm assuming because of some of the things you wrote about, that's maybe why people got upset. The same thing happened to Neil Donald Walsh when he wrote Conversations with God. There were people saying there's no way that that's God, that's the devil. And I find it funny, like you didn't even bring up demons or the devil. Do you think that those people that met you, that they were demons, or were they just bad spirits?
No, they were not demons. They were people who had lived selfish lives. And when they got to this other world, they just got worse and worse. I've spent some time in prisons, not as an inmate, but there to try and talk to the guys about making different choices in their lives. And the environment of a prison is so hellish. I mean, and that's not an exaggeration.
I believe.
I mean, they're living in a hellish environment in those prisons, and then we expect them to come out and be, participating members of society, and it's like everything they've learned in prison is contrary to being a decent social human being. It's madness. It's absolute madness to think that, because if you talk, the people that I talk to, there's no rehabilitation in prison. It's zero. It's the opposite. It's like a school for criminals.
Yeah. A lot of shame there too.
Yeah. And, the way that we treat people, because the guys that I talk to in prison are really very worthwhile, decent human beings who've made some really, really bad choices in their life.
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to, is like, you guys, you got to think about how you react to things, you know? The way you react is like, you got to think more before you act out, your anger.
That's so kind of synchronistic that you say that, because on the side, I produce people's shows and podcasts for them. And there's a guy named Dancing Dave who approached me and wanted to do a podcast called Surviving the System. And the whole thing is about that, about the prison system, the traps of it, what it's really like and how hard it is for them to come back into society, And I said, well, I don't know. I had to think about it, right? Because people are going to judge me in this network because this guy's going to be talking to, quote, criminals who've done bad things and stuff. And I actually had to pray about it a little bit and meditate on it. And that's kind of what Spirit told me. He said, well, if you're going to be a hypocrite, if you're not willing to hang around sinners, of so-called sinners, right? Then who are you? What are you doing this for?
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's do it. And so far it's been great.
And that's the problem with our churches, is that they tend to be comfort stations for people that think that they're righteous, and they exclude the people who really need support and community and a message of hope and love. I've served a number of churches as pastors, and rarely, if a person who clearly doesn't, quote, belong, prostitutes, very people that are all punked out, big giant purple mohawk with, chains and all the bells and whistles all over them and stuff like that, walk into church. And that's happened a few times. I mean, the people that go to that church are all like horrified, like, oh, oh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, this is good. These are the people, I had at one church I served here. I'll get on some real tender ground. I had a church where a very overt lesbian couple started attending.
Uh-huh.
And like, you could just feel all the people like, ooh, do they really belong here? And I'm like, no, these are the people we want in our church,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you should accept tolerance and be tolerant of everybody. I mean, I'm at that point where I don't care about that stuff. Not like, I mean, who's going to decide what's good or bad about that? It definitely ain't me. And I don't care. To me, they're just people, But I do wonder, did you talk to Jesus about, while you were passed away, about where he went, or did he study under some type of mystery school, or did he go anywhere? Like, why is there so much of his story that's left out in those scriptures?
He showed me and told me that he did so much stuff in this world, that, like it says in the Gospel of John, and if everything he did was recorded in books, that the world couldn't contain all the books. Like, I got to tell you this story because it's one of my best stories. When I was in seminary, I had a professor from Zimbabwe, and he was an African guy. His name was Gwinye Muzorera, and he had a PhD from United Theological Seminary in New York State. Anyways, a highly intelligent guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was a ordained Methodist. And he said, and I quote, pretty much exactly his words. He said, I feel sorry for you students because you think you brought the Christ to Africa. And he said, you know nothing. He said, Christ has always been in Africa, and we've always known the Christ. All you did was bring your understanding of who he was to us, but we've always known him, and he's always been there with us. And that, like, here's a classroom with 30 seminary students who we're all full of ourselves, right? We think we're going to all go out and save the world. And he just blew us out of our seats when he said that. And he was right. He was right. Jesus has been all over the world, and he was talking to the Maya Indians, and he was talking to the Chinese, and he was talking to the Africans and the Eskimos and everybody.
Yeah, and I even like in Edgar Casey's books, he talks about how and I don't know if he said he believed it or he knew it, but how he was reincarnated on the earth a few times. Did you talk to him about that, like reincarnation or anything, if that's even true or real?
We talked about it a little bit. He said that babies that die, they get to come back and have a life. But he said otherwise, he said for most people, one time on this merry-go-round's enough,
Yeah.
Then we get to move on. And he talked about, like when we go to heaven, if we want to have more life experience, we're probably going to go to a better world to have that. Cause like this is very low grade. I asked him, I said, is this world like first grade? And he said, no, it's much lower. And I said, kindergarten? He said, lower. And I said, nursery school? And he said, yeah, beginning nursery school.
Yeah. And we all think we're so intelligent, right?
Yeah. So he said that, like, if we want to have more life, like as a physical being, we would want to do that in a better, environment. I mean, like, who wants to do this again? I don't want to do it again.
Most of the people I talk to tell me that, actually, because I believe in reincarnation just because of all the stuff I've read and studied about it. But when I bring it up to most people, I will say that they say, I'm done. I don't want to come back here.
Yeah, wouldn't you want to go to a better world if you wanted to have more of a physical life? Wouldn't you want to go to like a better place?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I'm on your website, and I'm wondering, you got a lot of these. Are these your paintings? Did you do all these? Or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Wow. And is this some of the stuff that you saw, or did you just get inspiration from some things?
Well, it's as best as I could depict it with paint, yeah. But it's really frustrating trying to paint what I saw, because there's like way more colors out there that I can't buy at the store. I mean, I mean, I can't see them. I can't describe them,
Yeah.
Way more color.
Yeah, specifically like this one that I'm looking at that I just can't stop staring at, the spiral that you drew. It looks like almost like a tunnel, and it's got all these colors. Is that what you saw? Were you trying to represent that tunnel?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that is pretty. I bet you were happy to see that once you got out of that place, right? Whatever that place was.
Yeah.
All right. So our ideas so just to be clear, our ideas of hell, like there's a devil down there, the pitchfork poking people, and everybody's burning in flames. That's not what you saw.
No. I mean, I didn't get a complete tour of hell. I just got my experience in hell. But the way that Jesus, for example, describes the negative afterlife, which he talks about quite a bit. Matter of fact, 28 times in the Gospels to be exact, is mostly describes it as you will be cast into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And that's what I experienced. And the people, I've talked to many, many people that have had hellish near-death experiences, and every single one of them that I've talked to always talks about being in this place of darkness. I've never met anyone that's had a near-death experience who had a negative near-death experience that saw any fire or anything like that.
Okay.
I think the fire image in the Bible is really an image about torment. I mean, being roasted on fire is more about the spiritual, emotional state rather than anything physical.
And did you get to see, I didn't even ask you, were you there in what we perceive as heaven? Did you get to see?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he gave me a tour of it, and it's vast. So, I only saw a tiny fraction of it, but everything that's good that ever was, is, and will be is there, and we get to enjoy it, and we have all the time in the universe to participate in it, and so it's fun. Heaven is really, really fun, and you can't possibly be bored because it's full of like happy, good people all having a good time. So like, what's not to love about it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I don't want to keep you. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, I'll do one more segment with you and let you go if you want, because I know it's probably late where you're at, and I don't want Miss Marcia to get mad at me either, but look,
she's sound asleep by now. Believe me.
I want everybody, if you can, do me a favor. Like while we're, during the break, go to the website, go to howardstorm.com and go to the paintings. I dropped one of the images in the chat there in the Fringe FM chat so you guys could see it. And you could really tell that some of this stuff came from visions and inspiration for sure. And go check that out. All right. We'll be right back with Howard Storm.
This is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Paranormal News, I'm Brad Bernards. A mysterious headache-inducing tone has been tormenting a Brooklyn neighborhood for more than 6 weeks, and locals can't find the source or escape the sound. Drew Robbie, 42, first heard the sound last weekend when his wife pointed it out to him inside their home. According to Patch.com, the mysterious tone has been sounding intermittently since mid-May, and neighbors have reported headaches, painful sinus pressure, and increased stress, Robbie said. City data shows there have been about a half dozen 311 street noise complaints on the block since the tone first began. Robbie reported the sound to Con Edison and local police. A neighbor posted a notice reporting the city's Department of Environmental Protection suspected the sound was caused by an air conditioning system rooftop compressor. The tone hasn't been heard since Robbie posted his video on Twitter on Monday. Robbie, a real estate property manager who has lived on the block for about 15 years, said he's never heard anything like it before. The Kepler Space Telescope revealed planets outside our solar system by the thousands. With this wave of discoveries, astronomers realized something peculiar. The most common type of planet in the galaxy is one our solar system doesn't have. Now, for the first time, astronomers using the Hubble and Spitzer space telescopes have managed to peer into the atmosphere of one of these mysterious planets. They looked at one called GJ3470b to reveal what gases swirl around it. They found a surprisingly light atmosphere built almost entirely out of hydrogen and helium, more like the makeup of a star than a planet. The researchers, led by Bjorn Benneke of the University of Montreal, published their findings July 1st in Nature Astronomy. The simple atmosphere makes astronomers think that perhaps GJ3470b formed quite close to its star. There, the planet could have formed its solid rocky core, but picked up only light gases for its atmosphere. Find all of tonight's stories at paranormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Paranormal News.
Right, me old Chinas. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Light in the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of the fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
All right, so I'm going to get to some of your questions here from Mr. Storm for sure. I figured I didn't even give out the text-in line, and I've got text-ins. So one of the biggest questions that I've gotten, at least from 4 different people so far of Mr. Storm, is about that. And you and I were just discussing this at the break about angels and demons. Did you ever get to see them? Did you witness angels? And are they here amongst us, like the texts say, you know?
Yes, they are. After my experience, I don't know why God gave me this, but I had the ability to see them like basically all the time. And the world is full of angels and demons, and they can't make us do anything. They don't have that kind of power. The only power they have is the power that we give them. But we can give them power, angels or demons, we can give them power intentionally or unintentionally. Like, for example, if we've got like a lot of anger, we're going to invite a certain amount of demonic influence in our lives, because if we're angry, we want to hurt somebody back for hurting us. And so that's the problem with anger. If we want to do good, if we want like there's a guy that doesn't like me, and he's disliked me for a very long time. So I pray for him, and we're getting along better and better all the time. Slowly, I mean, it's taken years, but we're getting a better and better relationship. And a lot of it has to do with me not reacting to things that he does when he hurts my feelings. I just like try and not react to it and instead pray for him. So like when I'm driving on the road and somebody cuts me off for no good reason, I pray for him. My first reaction is to be angry, because that's fight or flight, right? And then the second thing I do is like, okay, I don't want to be angry. I just want, they're obviously having a bad day or they wouldn't be driving that way, So I pray for them and hope that they have, whatever it is that's bothering them, I hope they get over it and settle down and not endanger everybody else on the road.
Yeah. Do you care? I mean, it sounds like, though, that you care about the person, because you don't seem like the type of guy that would spend too much time on somebody that didn't like you to begin with, And I get that way, too. Yeah. Like, I want the people that I care about to like me, But sometimes they don't.
Yeah. If someone really just is hostile to me, I just figure that's their problem, and the kindest thing I can do is to avoid them. That, like when I was talking about the prison ministries thing, one of the things I kept trying to tell this guy, the other option is walk away. Just walk away. That's a line from a Mad Max movie, by the way. Just don't interact. People that have anger, for example, it's all about them. It has nothing to do with you anyways.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was, and I know it's not in the Gospels, but it's something that's always perplexed me, and I kind of mentioned it to you during the break, was there's this book in the Bible called Ecclesiastes, right? And it talks about how there's nothing new under the sun. And for those people that are always seeking wisdom, and even when I think of wisdom, I think like intellectual things, just trying to find out answers to everything. That in that book talks about that the more you seek that, the more sorrow that's going to happen in your life, or the more sorrow you're going to feel. And that all things are vanity, even like when we say we want to do good for other people. So I got a couple of questions, actually. First and foremost, like when we do something good for somebody, and I know that people do it because they think they're going to get rewarded, or they just do it because they want to feel better. That's okay, right? I mean, even if you're not doing it just because you care about that person or whatever, you did something good.
Yeah. Good is good for goodness sakes. Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Doesn't matter how you feel about it. You did something good, right?
Yeah. Like one of the things I like about my wife that's so adorable is like if we're walking like in the city or in the country or wherever, and she sees a piece of litter on the street, she walks over and picks it up and carries it and takes it to her trash bin. And it's like, I don't do that. I'm not that nice, She literally go pick up, some filthy piece of rotten paper and carry it around and dispose of it. It's adorable. It's so sweet. I love her for that. You know.
So earlier you talked about, and I don't understand this question to 603. You're going to have to reword your question, but I think I understand it. Is there really a spiritual war going on all the time? Because we talk about this idea of, like, if there's a God, right, then why would God create evil to begin with? In other words, if God created all of it, and he says that in the book of Isaiah, I created good and evil.
Yeah.
What's the point, right? And is there really a spiritual war going on behind the scenes, like we hear about all the time?
Okay, I talked about this topic with Jesus, and he was explained to me that we cannot know good, understand good, even define good without the opposite. One of the ways he expressed, since I was an artist, he said to me, what if I gave you one tube of paint and asked you to do a painting with one color? He said, could you do it? And I said, well, I could, but it wouldn't be too hot. And I was explaining to Jesus, like, as if he was an idiot. I said, the thing that makes a painting interesting is the contrast between warm colors, cold colors, between light and dark, blurry, defined, details, stuff like that. I said, that's what makes a painting interesting, is the contrast of all these different elements. And I said, so one tube of paint wouldn't work at all. And he said, that's why you've got good and evil. And I said, well, how come there's so much evil? And he said, because people choose it. It's not God's choice. And what God wants us to do is to make wiser choices. It goes back
for contrast, right? It's there for relative purposes, but there's so much of it because we choose it too much.
Yeah, and go back to the old thing of being in a relationship, which I'm trying to get better at. Like in my relationship with my wife, I'm trying to be a good man to her, and the result is I think she likes me more and more, and she treats me better. So it's like, yay, this is working out for me.
Gotcha. Okay, so I want to give you a tough example, and I'm only doing this because you and I talked about it off air, but I think it's important because it happened in my life. When I was a kid, when I was little, I used to, I would try to go see my mother, and now she passed away when I was 13 because she was an alcoholic, and it kind of killed her, but she married these men that would just beat her up, and I would tell her, Mom, when I get older, I'm going to kill these guys. I'm not playing. And I still kind of feel that way today. Like, if I met them, I'd probably kill them, and I've never been able to forgive them for that. And secondly, why don't people leave those bad situations? I've never understood that either, especially when it comes to relationships. They got a partner, somebody that's just hurting them or abusing them. And it doesn't always have to be physically. It could be verbally. Right. And they stay there. They don't leave. And they make excuses for them too.
Well, you're hitting a tender nerve with me because I grew up in the same kind of household. My father was extremely abusive, not just to me and my sisters, but to my mom, which hurt me a lot more than what he did to me. Because she would make excuses. I mean, afterwards I said, Mom, you gotta leave him, get away from him. He's terrible. He's a monster. And she, you can't help it, blah, blah, blah,
Exactly, yeah. Oh, he's just having a bad day. Like, what?
Yeah. It's one of the things that we have to do in our society is that we can no longer tolerate abuse. Many women in our society, I've heard different figures, but one of them is 1/3 of women have experienced some kind of sexual molestation as a child. And that's got to stop. I mean, that when I was young, nobody ever talked about that. That was just like, oh, we don't talk about that sort of thing, it was just hidden, and which meant it was tolerated. And we've got to bring all this stuff out into the open and talk about it, like the way people abuse children, the way it's mostly women who are abused by men, the way men abuse women. We got to talk about that stuff and stop it. And I've had some opportunities to try and bring that stuff out in the open, and I think that that's the only way to deal with it, is bring it out to the open and tell people you cannot tolerate that. You're not doing yourself or your children or your family any favor by sweeping that stuff under the carpet.
So, if let's say I was a man that beat my wife or beat kids. I'll never understand why people do that. Like, if you beat up on if you're listening to me and you beat up on things that are weaker than you, you've got more than just a problem. You know? Yeah. But it makes me angry. But let's say I do that and I pass away, right? Do you think that I'm going to go to that place that you went?
I definitely think you're going to go to that place. You're going to get to experience it 100-fold what you did, and you're not going to like it.
Well, that satisfies me. If that's real and if that's true, I don't know why, but I like the sense of justice. I think we all want people to feel their own suffering. And when I talk about, I've talked to a lot of people and read a lot of books about life reviews, kind of like you were talking about. Yeah. Where no matter what, even if we get away with it on earth, or you're saying that in our life reviews, we're going to feel all of that stuff that we do to other people.
I believe that 100%. One of the interesting things about trying to understand what God's like, which is pretty hard to understand God because it's so much bigger than what we could ever conceive of. So they talk about God being a God of love and mercy and a God being a God of justice. I think that ultimately the universe is just, and if we don't see the justice in this world, it's going to definitely be in the next.
Yeah, I bring that up. I didn't know it was that big of a problem until one day I was riding around on Little Rock and I got lost, and I went under these railroad tracks and I came to a dead end road and there were these women in the street, and it's like they didn't want me to go any further. And then I saw these women. I looked to the right and I saw these women peeking over a wall, and I'm like, what the heck is this place? Yeah. And I said, so I asked the lady in the street, I said, how do I get back towards town? I have no idea how I even got out here. Yeah. And what is this place? And she said, well, if I tell you, you can't tell anybody. And I said, well, I'm not going to tell anybody, but I'm starting to wonder why all these women are caged up in here. It was really weird, And she said, this is a home for battered women. In other words, they were in a place where these guys couldn't find them, and most of them were scared. Right. And so, that's to me is one of the biggest problems that we got. You're right, is abuse, and we've got to get rid of it, get it out in front and weed it out big time.
Yeah. And everybody knows that this stuff is generational. If a person is abused, they're gonna repeat that same kind of behavior. I've spent my entire life trying to not be like my dad. It's been interesting trying to define myself with okay, that's the way he used to do stuff. I'm not gonna interact with people that way. My father was a highly successful salesman, and he was very well off, and he was a monster.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard a lot of stories about that too. About certain people that are up in high places, or they got good friends, and even if you went out into the public and you said, look, this guy's doing this, no one's going to believe you. They're going to take his side. And there's a lot of different situations about it. And I guess my biggest question to you, and what I'm trying to get at is is I know I'm supposed to forgive these guys that did this to my mother, but I've forgiven a lot of things in my life, and people have forgiven me for a lot of things, but that I'm still struggling with.
Well, my suggestion is forgiveness is not human. It's not something that we inherently have the capacity to do. What we as humans want to do is payback. And so the only way that we can ever really, truly forgive, and I mean, I struggle with the same thing, is I gotta give it over to God. And I say, okay, God, I can't do it, but you can do it. So I'm throwing this back at you, you know?
Right. Just let him have it, huh?
Yeah, that's what I did with my dad. I gave my dad over to Jesus. And when I did that, I felt no longer any responsibility. I mean, we were clear, you know. The account was all cleared out. I gave him over to Jesus and said, "You deal with it, because I can't deal with it because I'm too angry."
Do you think that, is it your opinion that we are all going to experience kind of the same similar things that you did, or do you think that it is based on how we believe?
I think that everybody's going to experience a similar thing. In a book by John Burke called Imagine Heaven, he cites two Norwegian scientists who did near-death studies in India. And according to John Burke, these Norwegian guys interviewed hundreds of people in India, and none of them saw in their near-death experience any of the Indian gods, but they all described that they saw a guy, they didn't know who he was, and he was wearing a white robe, and he had long hair and a beard. And he was very loving and kind to them, but they didn't know who he was. So whether you know anything about Jesus or Christianity, I think everybody's going to end up meeting the man, you know?
Is that what he had? He had white hair? Is it like is it like the pictures that we see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I forget the name of the girl. Do you know who I'm talking about? The little girl that passed away that came back, and she drew a picture of I forget what her name is, but it was
Akani.
Yeah. That picture. I've seen a lot of pictures of Jesus, but that's the only one I've ever looked at, and others have said the same thing, that they felt something like that was real when they looked at it. You know,
she did a good job. She's some kind of prophet or something. She's amazing.
Do you think that maybe, and I'm not trying to boost your ego or anything like that, but do you think maybe that's what you're here to do?
Well, I very deliberately am out here trying to promote our relationship with God through Jesus, you know, because he's not only was he personally my savior, but I believe he's universally the savior.
Well, you know, look, I'm going to just tell you flat out, it's a scary situation for me as a radio host to bring someone on and talk about this, but I have to be true to what I'm trying to do. And that if I'm really a seeker of truth, like most of us say we are, then I have to be willing to listen to everybody's experience. And your experience to me tells me that, you know, like if there is a Jesus, which I believe the man existed, you know how some people believe it's just a myth and it's just a concept. They call it Christ consciousness, right? I kind of think that both are going on, but I'm not so sure about that. I'll rant about that later. But the ideas that you're talking about they make more sense to me than what we were taught in religion, to me.
Yeah. Well, I think real Christianity is something that needs to be contagious and not about doctrine and about rules and do this and don't do that. It's more of a way of living. And I've met really saintly people in the church and outside the church, and they tend to just be very gentle, kind, loving people. And I go, I want to be like that. That's what I want to be like. I'll tell you an anecdote. I went to the grocery store 2 days ago, and when I went in, the sun was shining, and when I came out, it was a downpour. I'm talking deluge, just the skies opened up and it was pouring. So here I got my grocery cart, and I'm wearing a T-shirt and shorts, right? And I'm standing at the door, and there's a woman there in her late 80s, and she just looked like the sweetest little old lady in the world. And I said, boy, I wasn't expecting this. And she said, we really did need the rain.
Huh.
She's like, right. Because you know what she was thinking about? She was thinking about the grass and the trees and the flowers and the bushes and the shrubs. They needed the rain. We hadn't had any rain in a while. The ground was really dry and cracking, and she's looking at this downpour, and rather than thinking about how inconvenient it's going to be to get out to the car, she's thinking, oh, this is good for the world. And she just turned my head around, because I'm thinking about, boy, I don't want to get cold and wet going out to the car. And she's thinking about, oh, isn't this nice for the world that we got this rain? She was a real inspiration to me. I don't know who she was, just a sweet little old lady looking at the rain, which she was about to go into like I did,
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you spending this time with us tonight. I was going to spend the last few minutes to give my kind of final thoughts on all this and tell a story that kind of relates to yours in a way. But I will say that the conversation that we had, I was expecting a guy to come on the radio show and just try to sell me on Christianity, kind of, right? That's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But what I heard is something totally different. And it's not that you're not doing that, but everything that you talk about, your death, the stuff you experienced, the fear, especially the hellish stuff, it sounded to me like it was very real. And I'm not glad it happened, but I'm glad that you made it back and that you get to share your message with folks. And regardless of what people believe, I think you're doing good things. You're doing good in this world. And like you said before, good is good, right?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks. I'm, I know I'm a flawed human being, but I'm trying to do the best that I can. And I know that that's all that God expects me is just to, try and do a good job.
Oh, yeah. And by all means, plug away. The website, howardstorm.com. Do you got any other links you want to mention or any social profiles you want people to check out?
No, that's my whole shtick there. There's a contact in that website if anybody wants to email me.
Yeah, the website's really cool. There's the 12 gifts, the paintings, the books are there. There's even a blog and a contact form if you want to contact Mr. Storm. And thank you for spending time with us and talking to us late nighters. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, it's been real fun for me. I've enjoyed it very much.
All right, guys, we'll be right back with final thoughts on this. And if you got any questions, you can call in too. We'll be right back.
Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves strip bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand 3 truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in 1 business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Greetings, galactic community. This is Suzanne Ross, host of Sci-Spy Radio, every Wednesday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific. Join me for this brand new show featuring a revolutionary new genre, Sci-Spy, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. Together, scientific discovery and spiritual revelation reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Tune in to Sci-Spy Radio every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific and discover the truth for yourself at thefringe.fm.
You know, food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply, which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
I'm not tired.
thank Mr. Howard Storm for coming on the program. That was actually very pleasant. And believe it or not, some of us on the Lighting the Void staff were a little worried because anytime you get into religion or things like that, it can get touchy. Some people get angry. They don't like to hear others talk about God and Jesus and whatever, you know. It's kind of funny that in this community we don't mind listening to other people talk about Buddha and Hindu gods and all this other stuff, but if they bring up anything having to do with Jesus or Christianity, we get all upset. And look, I used to be that way too, but I really want to hear everybody's story, and that was a pretty compelling story. And the Reverend Dan Lopez is with us, and when he started talking about that dark place, I was like, man, that's Dan has told us about that place several times. Did you heard that, right, when he brought that up?
I did.
God, that's freaky, man. What were you thinking when he said that? Were you just thinking, yep, like I've been there before? Or, you know, is it that freaky like he's talking about? He said he felt it was really like a depressing place. Was it depressing to you when you were there?
No, for me, it wasn't depressing at all. In fact, it was the most peaceful place I'd ever been in. He mentioned something about what Jesus had said about the darkness and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, maybe I wasn't there long enough.
Yeah. Look, I think that's why I asked him that question at the end. I said, do you think that everybody has different experiences, right, when they go through this? Now, I don't know. Obviously, we're not really going to know for sure until we pass away. It is like the greatest mystery of all. But
right.
Others, like William Buhlman and others that have worked with stuff like this, I guess you could say, speak specifically about your beliefs. I mean, William Buhlman talks about that. He said that he would go to places where people were even congregated in churches and stuff. And he traveled through several different belief systems. And it's amazing to me how that keeps coming up. Robert Monroe talked about that, about when he was trying to help people move along, like people that died that didn't know they were dead or just figured out they died, that they thought that he was a demon from hell. You know, they were afraid that he was the devil, that they were going to take him to hell. And even people that had addictions, that smoked or had sexual addictions, brought that stuff into the afterworld. And I wonder, just like, that scares me more than hell, actually, because if our thoughts, beliefs, and addictions carry over into some place of eternity, then we need to start being a little bit more damn careful about what we put our energy into, you know?
Very curious thing. Yeah, it's a very curious thing to think that, you know, there's the likelihood of something happening similar for everybody, because there are different levels of consciousness, and being that there's different level of consciousness, you know, which level are you at when you're at, like, between stages of life and death, between stages of life and spirit, between stages between spirit and your soul, between stages between your soul and group consciousness. You know, there's group consciousness, and there's earth consciousness, and then there's, you know, the solar system consciousness, and then there's universal consciousness, there's Christ consciousness. You know, it goes on and on and on. But like I said, it's very curious. You really don't know what's going on until you're in there. So, I mean, I love this story. I thought it was fantastic, and it's a hell of an experience.
You know,
that he had.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell him, I didn't want to keep him up too late, because I think he thought he was only staying an hour, so he got to spend that much time with us. That was great, right? But I wanted to tell him the story about the only time I really felt a demonic presence in my life. And I guess I'll tell you, because I know you'll listen to me. The Reverend Dan Lopez always listens to me.
When you were married?
No. Yeah, well, there's actually another story about that, but this one was real evil, right? And I was a kid, and I didn't get to go see my mom too much because my dad was very protective of me, and he knew that she was an alcoholic, and he didn't want me over there, and that's another story, you know. But I got to spend Christmas Eve with my mom. And sure enough, my stepdad is going to town on her. My sisters are asleep. I don't know if you guys know this, but I've got two very awesome half sisters that I wish I had a better relationship with, and a half brother too, but they're asleep. My brother's asleep. I'm the only one that's awake hearing this happening on Christmas Eve. And if you're still believe in Santa, plug your ears, right? So they're out putting out the presents, and I can hear them doing it. And I already felt it was so weird when I was a kid. I felt bad things were going to happen before they happened. There's a bunch of stories I can go into about that, but sure enough, they got to arguing, and the next thing you know, they're hitting. You know, he's hitting her, and I mean, I could hear him just whack hitting her. You know, like asking my mother, you know, do you want another one, right? And I'm sitting there trying to keep my eyes shut, trying not to cry, because I don't want this asshole to hear me and come in here and let loose on me. And all I could think was, if he touches me, my dad's going to kill him, you know. But my dad didn't know all that stuff was happening. But anyways, you know, you could smell the alcohol as a kid. It's present. You kind of know. You smell the whiskey and the beer and all that, I guess, that familiar smell of, I don't know, stupidness. We called it partying in high school, but when you're a kid, you smell it. And sure enough, he comes into the room like he always does after he gets through hitting her to check and see if we're asleep. But this time I wasn't asleep, and I'm on the top bunk above my brother's bed. And I'm trying to shut my eyes. And the sumbitch walks into the room and gets right up next to the bed and puts his face right like 6 inches from mine. And the beer smell was so bad, man. Or alcohol. It probably wasn't beer, but I can smell it now talking about it. And I was so afraid. I was like, this dude's he's going to yank me out of here. He's going to start beating on me. If he touches me, my dad's going to kill him, right? And I'm thinking this. And he goes, you're not asleep. And the voice that came out of his mouth did not sound like his voice. I got so scared, man. I felt like there was a demon there. That's like if I felt like if I opened my eyes, I wasn't going to see him. I was going to see something worse. And, you know, him talking about that stuff about how those beings or whatever people that were hitting him and trying to hurt him and all this stuff and making him feel like crap or trying to make him feel like crap, it made me think of that. It gave me a flashback of that story. And that's why I don't really subscribe to, I'm having a hard time subscribing to the fact that God created evil for contrast, you know. It doesn't make sense to me. The kinds of suffering that we go through, that it's just for contrast, right? Because when we choose evil, sometimes we choose it. When we choose evil, other people suffer. Not just the person doing it, but the kids, hell, animals, you know. Hell, I know people that kick dogs just to kick them. But I do believe in some type of evil. When people ask me about that, maybe it's just because I was scared and I felt it, but I never have gotten the chance to get, not really to get justice for that. Cause I always feel like if I ever saw that dude again, I would freak out. I never did though. After, you know, I got to a certain age and they moved and never saw the guy again. And all I could think about is just getting my hands around his throat. How am I supposed to, how is that going to affect what happens after I die? All right. Like, what's that going to do to me? You know? So I'll worry about, I think about stupid, it's like shower thoughts. I think about stuff like this all the time, Dan.
Nothing wrong with that. You know what? I think it's really funny, though. Did you ever question or ask anybody, why you have these certain... I think it's a gift, but how come you get to hear spirit coming through somebody? Wasn't there somebody that was standing on a roof and just looked down at you and said, "The devil's got you, boy"?
Yeah. Back when I was having those panic attacks. Yep. His name was Denver.
That?
I don't know, man. It felt really crazy though. And I think it has something to do with emotion. Yeah, the more I think about it, like in my life, whenever I've felt a lot of fear, we've all felt fear, like, oh man, the cops after me, that kind of fear. Or I'm not talking about that kind of fear. I'm talking about like a darker type of fear. Anytime I've felt that, I've seen stuff or been talked to. It's been kind of few and far between. I don't think it's a gift. It seemed like a curse to me.
Depends on how you look at it.
Well, the reason why I say that, Dan, is because I've never had anybody, I've never had a good thing like that I can recall where a spirit spoke to me that was good and said, "Hey, Joe, you're awesome." Right? Like, you know what I mean? It's always been the weird.
Yeah,
bad
I do
stuff.
know what you mean, but it's like kind of like a radio station, it's kind of like you're tuning. If you're not tuned in, you're not dialed in, you're not paying attention to the station, and you're hearing it all the time, but you're too busy taking care of other things to actually think that just might be spirit saying that you're doing okay, or giving you praise, or saying you're okay, or you're awesome. I'm sure you get that a lot. That's not always just coming from people,
Yeah, but you're talking about that one specific time when I was having a panic attack and I ran out of that porta potty and Denver was on that scaffold and he looked at me and said, "The devil's got you."
I was saying, I was talking about that, but you're saying that you don't hear the positive. You don't never hear the positive. And I'm just trying to tell you that you might not be listening for the positive.
No, I hear it when my cat meows. Nobody loves me on this earth more than that cat. I really believe that. That cat,
okay.
That cat sleeps where I sleep. You know how pets, they get that anxiety when you're gone, right? And when you show up, they're so freaking happy. That's I wish we were more that way as humans. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. That's kind of funny because when I got in tonight, there was, my sister's got 2 dogs and I've been here for like 3 months, right? So I got close with the dogs. And, Teddy is, this little tiny thing. And he's a little curmudgeon. So, but I get in here and he's like right at the door and he's like, shaking and everything like that. And I go to pet him and whatever, and he's making the weirdest noise. He's never made a noise like this since I've known him. And it's all because, he missed me. I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, "Arr."
Yeah.
I was just like, what the hell?
You could even call that dog an idiot. Like, what are you doing, moron, idiot, stupid? And it'll still do that. It don't care. It just wants you around. And the new dog that's here that just showed up is the same way. Good God. He's so big and he jumps and spins circles. And the other day he was walking behind me and stepped on the back of my flip flop and I fell on my face, and I was so mad. I was like, "Get off of me." And he had that look to where he just kind of looked down, like, "I'm sorry." Right. And I was like, "Oh, damn it." Not to mention my toes are burning from the concrete, but, don't do that. And he kind of walked off and just laid down. Like he felt bad, man. He felt bad that he hurt me. He's not just some brainless moron. The dog has feelings,
Absolutely.
But yeah, the more I think about it, my grandmother that just passed away was very like spiritual like that. And she was the one person that I went to when I was having those panic attacks that would make me feel better. And she would always say, well, son, it's those demons. Demons are after you. And back then I was like, demons or whatever. I don't know about all that. Well, look, I recall a time she loved to shop in these thrift places. She always liked to go to like the dollar store or Save a Lot or not Save a Lot, but the Goodwill or secondhand stores, TJ Maxx. She never liked to pay retail for stuff. So I would just follow her around while she was doing these things. And well, because she'd throw me a bone too, she'd buy me stuff, just to be honest with you. But I felt so much love around her. And when you're having panic attacks like that, that's all you want to do is be around somebody cares about you. Well, we walked by this piano that was, I think it was at one of the Goodwills in Little Rock. And she said, you don't think it's demons messing with you, do you? And I said, no, I really don't. I think it's some type of psychological thing that I got, or maybe it's the fact that I don't drink and smoke and party and I just quit and my brain can't handle it anymore. I don't know. And we walked by this piano and it went ding, 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 just played, right? And then she looked at me and she goes, well, what do you think about that? And I said, well, that's probably a trick piano. And she goes, that's not a trick piano, son. You need to wake up, right? And I was like, what? I started feeling really weird. And I went and asked the clerk, I said, what's up with that piano? He goes, I don't know, somebody dropped it off. I said, is it one of those trick piano things, whatever? He just looked at me like I was an idiot. He's like, what are you talking about? It's a piano. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, there's something weird going on here, man. And but see, the reason why I ignored it, Dan, and I didn't really look into it much is because I felt like the more I've looked into it and thought about it, the more it happened. And it just stirred up more fear in me. So I tried to ignore as much as I could back then, And
how do you feel about it now?
I think something was going down, for sure. Like, I don't know if it was demons or if it was, I don't know what it was, but I cannot explain it. It was definitely paranormal activity. How about that?
You shining, boy.
Yeah, like I don't want to say it was demons because then now if I say that, then I have to admit that there's really demons and now I got to deal with these sumbitches, right? So,
No, it's not just demons. There are other things too, It's just.
It could have been like an angel or somebody out of body playing around or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Could have been. But you like to minimize things and you like to displace the actuality of stuff, and the more you put it off, it's like you're shutting it off. And so the more you shut it off, the less it happens. And so if you don't want that kind of experience in your life, you can turn it off. Some people feel like they can't, but I don't know about that. I think you can shut it off, and it'll come back too if you want it to come back. It just sometimes it takes a little bit of shock to the system in order for it to re-trigger itself.
You know what I think it is? I think the reason why I choose to ignore it is because when I was a kid, when I would see those things that I told you about I saw all the time, the more focus and attention and that I gave that emotion. Like when you get full of fear, right? And then you really dial in on it enough to where you can hear your heart beating, that kind of a fear that fills you full of adrenaline. Those are the times I saw things, right? And the more you fed on that, the more it perpetuated and the worse it got. And that happened to me a lot when I was a kid, night after night. So maybe it's just like in my adult life, when those things would happen, I would choose to not pay attention because I knew that it was just going to perpetuate. It was going to cause more strange stuff, which causes more fear, which causes more strange stuff. And next thing you know, you're in a padded room.
That's right. That's right. That's why you don't talk to people about that kind of stuff unless they say something. And even then, you got to be wary about it because you don't know where they're coming from when they ask you these things. Why are you asking me this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I didn't tell the clerk when he asked me, he's like, why are you asking me this? I said nothing, because I didn't go, yeah, the piano's playing by itself, right? Because you know what's going to happen. He's going to walk over there and he's going to inspect it and go, no, it's not, you know. And then, you know, he's going to go, are you okay, sir? Sir, you're being loud. You need to calm down, sir. And next thing you know, the cops are there, and they tell the cops that you saw a piano playing. They ask you a question.
That's a bit extreme. I think it'd be more like, I don't know about that.
It happens. It happened to a listener of mine, actually. All you got to do is say a few weird things to people that don't want to hear that stuff, and they will keep asking questions until they think something's wrong with you. And because they care so much, they send you to the hospital.
Well, that could happen.
Yeah, you know who it is, too.
That could happen.
So, I don't know. I don't want to say that it's a gift or I'm tapping into something until I know, you know, but yeah, I get your point.
You don't want to go to the hospital. You don't want to go to the hospital.
No, but I get your point. Maybe I do ignore certain things that I shouldn't. Right? Like maybe I'm just putting it off because I don't want to deal with it.
Well, it's up to you whether if you want to. It really is up to you if you want to engage in that or not, or explore it more. You know, I mean, if you feel like it's a curiosity, I would definitely look into it. I mean, it's not like you don't, you know, have some practices to protect yourself and whatever. So yeah, it's not like you have to go in there, you know, all fearful and everything like that. It's definitely a curiosity. And like I said, it's not all demons or whatever. It's the other side.
Well, the cool thing is, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. The cool thing is that tonight turned out a lot better than I had anticipated. Mr. Storm's story was fantastic. I hope you guys go check out the website, howardstorm.com. Tomorrow night, we're going to get back into the UFO field with Rob Shelsky, I believe that. And then we're going to have open lines Friday night again. And I want to thank Pacho for hooking this up, and Dawn. I'm starting to call her Mother Goose. And don't forget that this show is produced by the Fringe FM. Please don't copy it without written permission. Music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, same time. Good night.
Affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.